Hi, I'm Ernie.
And I'm Ben.
And this is Budget Nerds.
What was all in your mind?
You are not alone.
No, you are not. Happy New Year, friends. Welcome back to another show. Today, Ben and I are going to be talking about the 4 rules. But we're going to frame them as habits because this is something that Jesse has been experimenting with on his podcast. So we thought it'd be a really fun experiment if we just walked through them and reframed each one as a habit. How does that sound, Ben?
Sounds great. Yeah, I was listening to, I think the first time he started talking about this on a podcast, and he was like, I was a guest on another podcast, and I just did it. That's so Jesse.
I was just going to say that. So Jesse, I would have to
He's
think
like, I just
through
did
it for months, and he just on a whim.
Yeah, and exactly. And yeah, he's like, and it works. So we've been talking about it a lot, just kind of like, what if these rules were habits, or what if we frame them that way? So we're experimenting. That's what we're doing here. So that's as much preparation as Ernie and I have done. So I think we're gonna go with it today.
But I will say, I'm all in on this. As soon as I heard Jesse on his podcast, I don't know if I've listened to the one that he was talking about, but as soon as I heard him frame them as habits, I was like, totally. This just, it makes sense to think of the method as habits.
Yeah. It's all things that you do, right? So that's what a habit is. It's just something you do over and over again. So I think, should we just jump right in? I think the first one is obvious.
Let's jump right in.
Right? Yeah, let's do it. Rule 1, give every dollar a job. Or is it habit 1, give every dollar a job? Interesting. Is it something that you do over and over again?
Absolutely.
Yes. Check. Is it, I mean, I guess is that the only criteria for a habit? I don't know.
I think so. Something that you do and something that you do regularly.
Exactly.
And that is exactly what you are doing with your money. You are deciding before you spend the money what it needs to do. But you're not doing that until after you're actually paid.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that you point that out, that it's something you do after you get paid, because I think that this is more of a habit with the YNAB method. It's more of a thing that you do over and over again. Because I remember back in the day when I used Mint, setting up my spending limits and things like that, it was like a one-time activity.
Yes.
Right?
The first of every month.
Income. Yeah, but not even that. It was like I did it once and then it just kind of stayed.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like it was like more like just setting up targets, and that was the only thing, right? But with YNAB, every time you get paid, you're going to allocate that money instead of just like, okay, these are my spending limits and it's going to be like that forever. And maybe a few changes here and there. As opposed, I think that's more like other budgeting methods. But with YNAB, it's more like, hey, we're gonna do this consistently every time you get any new money, not just when you get a paycheck, but any new money at all.
This one always threw me off. I think this habit of figuring out what to do with your money before you spend it, but after you receive it, it didn't click with me right away. And I that makes sense, right? With any new habit. I remember I got into meditation about a year, 2 years ago or something like that. And it just, when I was starting that regular practice of meditating, it just felt so clunky. I'm like, oh, this isn't me. I don't know if I can really do this, but sitting down every day and just for a small amount of time practicing that, I started to get the hang of it. Things started to click. And I was like, oh, I can see myself doing this long term. But with money and habit 1, rule 1, it was really, really clunky for me at first because I was so used to just something you do one time or maybe at the beginning of every single month and you just set it and forget it. But now I'm actively looking at the money I have, creating a plan for that.
Yeah. And it's what I love is that it's very active. Like, you go line by line and set those categories and set and allocate the money. And while you're doing that, you're thinking about your priorities. Like the things just, the most important things just rise to the top.
Yes.
It's awesome. And I think that's what's so magical about it is because it's a consistent thing and it's not like a one-time thing and you forget about it, it actually is, it actually brings those priorities up more often. So you kind of recall what's important to you over and over again, and that's why I do think, we talked about this before, Ernie, where like I've been using auto assign for a long time and just like when I get paid, hit the button.
Yep.
And it all populates, and I've been trying. I don't do it super consistently because like it is nice when it's just like I just get it done, because I know what it's going to be because I have targets on every category. But I have been trying to go line by line a little more often, and I think it is good because you just kind of remember what those priorities are and how much, like literally, how important is this to you? Let's put a dollar amount on it,
Yep.
Every single time. So. And I think just recalling your goals and recalling your priorities over and over again really makes it a part of you. That's huge.
Because that's the thing with habits. For them to be worth doing, they have to yield some sort of result that you like, right? That moves you forward. And with habit number 1, give every dollar a job, you see results. And it makes you come back and want to do it time and time again. I mean, we talked about the priorities. That is a huge result. I think another one is clarity. Like right away, when you give jobs to those dollars, you now have this full picture of what all your money needs to do before you're paid again. That's huge.
Yeah.
And I think
you have that plan you can always look back on.
Yeah. And another result, scarcity. And maybe this isn't one you go in thinking about. Like I hope to embrace.
I love talking about
scarcity, but it happens. You realize, I don't have this infinite amount of money. There's only so much I can do with this pile, and I love that.
That one is huge because another thing with habits is because you do it consistently, it starts to feel less daunting and less scary. Like you were talking about with meditation, if it didn't feel like you at first, it felt clunky and weird and maybe even a little scary because like alone with my thoughts or or just focusing on my breath and it's weird and it's unusual, but it's the same thing with this idea of scarcity. That's usually a bad word, right?
Yeah.
But we talk about embracing the scarcity of your money, like actually acknowledging that your money is finite. And I think that's what a lot of people want to avoid, actually. Like when you talk about, hey, I need to, I want to focus a little more on my money. I want to start managing it. So a lot of people avoid it because they don't want to feel constrained. That's what I think when you do it, you find out that it's not so much about constraint, but that's the fear, right? But if you do that, if you actually look at the scarcity and embrace it over and over and over again, it doesn't feel so scary anymore, right? Because you do it over and over again. So that's why rule 1 being a habit that you do consistently really helps.
And the other thing I noticed with this habit is I got in the other habit of not spending future dollars. So when I was in the moment, looking at the money that I have, embracing embracing scarcity,
yes,
I got in the habit of ignoring future paychecks, even future like surpluses, like tax refunds, bonuses, things like that. I mean, in the past, I'm getting this chunk of money in the future. I'm going to spend it right now today because I know it's coming in a month. I know it's coming in 2 weeks. And then inevitably, something else would pop up and I would have to, change my plans. And like, I already spent some of that money and now I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. But it's second nature now. I do not, yes, I think about future income and I make a mental plan of what maybe I want to do, but I just will not spend that money.
Yeah. You don't actually go with the credit card and spend it ahead of time. And that is a big deal. Like, I think we need to stop and recognize that what a big deal that is. Because I mean, I even struggle with that. Like, if I know I'm getting a bonus coming up, I'll like spend it in my head a few different ways, and then when I actually sit down and do it in YNAB, it's like, oh, it didn't go that far, right? But yeah, like truly, just waiting. Like it's, and I think this is going to come up a lot of times. It's like this Zen thing where you're like, I don't need that, I don't need to like run around and have this big hassle of like, oh, I need to spend it now because if I don't spend it now, something's going to come up that, that like scarcity mindset. I think that just being able to wait and say, I don't need that money right now is really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm getting ahead of myself because I think that's going to be some Rule 4 stuff, but we'll hold on to that.
And I just keep thinking of like, I'm thinking through, man, the way I handle money now is so different than the way I handled it 15, 20 years ago. So I hope everyone else listening, that you've been using YNAB for a long time. These habits are they happen automatically. They're second nature to you. I hope you're realizing how far you've come.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Like this stuff becomes so much a part of you that you don't even really recognize how remarkable it is, So maybe that's part of what we're doing here.
Okay. Anything else there with rule 1, habit 1, give every dollar a job?
I mean, probably if we kept talking, we could talk forever, but we should move on. Let's move on to rule 2, habit 2.
Okay.
What is it, Ernie?
Embrace your true expenses. For me, this is a habit of thinking about future Ernie, future Christy, future family, right? Where we are taking some of the money that we have right now and setting it aside for those things that we don't spend money on every single month. That way, when they actually happen, we're ready. And just to compare this to the old Ernie and those habits, I was in the habit of always, whatever I got that month, we would spend. Christy and I would spend it all. Hey, we paid the bills. Awesome. Let's have a great last week of the month. Go out to eat every single night. I don't even remember what we did when we were young, but I know we spent money foolishly. But now we're taking that leftover money and it's automatic. Like there's no questions asked. The leftover money is starting to go towards a lot of those future expenses that we know are going to land on our doorstep.
Yeah. And still planning for the fun things too.
Yes. But there's a limit.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not like you can't have fun, but it's like there's a limit where and it's not like a limit like, oh man, like you're a bad person. It's a limit like I want to have less stress in my life. and that's the trade-off you're making. You're giving up something now for less stress and less fear and no financial ruin even 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months from now or even longer, right? So and it is a habit because you do it consistently.
Yes.
And rule 2, consistency is absolutely key because if you don't set money aside consistently for a car repair, you're not going to have enough when it comes up. So it's not just a one and done thing. I'm going to do it once and then I'm done. It's a constant. You're constantly assessing. You're constantly setting money aside for it, and changing the amount. I mean, this is such a lifelong practice because it changes all the time. You ever have people ask in a workshop like, how much do I need for car repairs? Like, what's the amount?
Absolutely.
Like, what's like a lot of folks are like, I want to know what all the amounts are. And it doesn't work that way.
Right. I've changed my auto repair amount like 300 times over the past 10 years.
It's not, a lot of folks want to be like one and done. And it's just not that way because your life changes. And so the amounts change. I mean, I'm getting ready to, my grandfather passed away a couple months ago, sadly. And nobody wants his Cadillac. So I'm getting the Cadillac. It's like a 2002 giant boat of a car. It's probably worth like $800. This thing, right? And I'm gonna take it. I don't know if I'm gonna keep it, but I'm gonna take it, and that'll mean insurance and more stuff, so, and more, and probably some auto maintenance, right? So I'll need to change it then, so that's one thing I'm looking forward to changing a little bit, right?
That's awesome. This is a total aside, but I think that fits you so well. I love it. And I hope you come back in 6 months and you're like, I'm refurbishing this baby. Like,
I got some rims. I mean, it's a cool car, not gonna lie. Like, I drove it I was like there at the funeral, and I just like moved the car like down the street, and I was like, this thing is a boat. Like, you ever have a dream where you're driving and you're in the backseat of the car and you're driving?
No.
You know what I mean? You ever have that dream? This is a common dream.
Is it for control freaks?
Maybe.
Because I am, and I'm surprised I don't have this dream.
Let me know in the comments if you've ever had this dream. Apparently it's a common dream when people are stressed out, is you're driving a car but you're in the back seat, and like there's all this car in front of you. That's what driving the Cadillac was like. There was like this hood that was as long as my van in front of me. Anyways, all that to say, that's a life change, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be getting this, and it'll mean new categories and changing auto maintenance amounts, and who knows? And who knows if I'll keep it? But
you're taking a shot.
Nobody else wanted it, Ernie. Yes,
so
my parents, my aunt, my sister. So they were like, "Give it to Pat. He only has one car and he has 4 kids. It's crazy." So there you go.
Oh, that's awesome. So embracing your true expenses, reframing this as a habit, I think it's probably the most difficult to stomach because there isn't that instant gratification.
Totally.
Right? You have this money and you're like, why can't I just spend this right now? Like, you set it aside for the future. You don't know when that future will actually be here. There's no instant gratification. And this is something we want to run up against all the time with folks who are paying off debt, because we tell them, hey, before you get super aggressive with your debt payoff, start putting money aside for your non-monthly expenses. And I feel that pushback because it used to be me. Like, well, why am I setting this aside now when I have this immediate debt staring me in the face? Like, let's tackle that right now.
Makes sense.
I have the ability to, but boy, and this is what I always try to tell them in workshops. Like, once you actually taste, what it's like to that expense lands on your doorstep and you can just pay for it. Like, that feeling, I mean, it's intoxicating. It is the best. I still get a rush to this day when something pops up. And I'm like, I've got the money.
It feels so good.
It's sitting there, right? I didn't spend this money when I got paid. I saved it for this exact time. And it has saved me so many times. So, once you taste the glory, like, you can never go back.
Taste the glory. Just thinking of Jack Black, or was that a Dr. Lee reference? Yes. Don't you want to taste the glory? Just a little taste.
That's exactly why I said it.
It's literally my favorite movie. Somebody asked me the other day what my favorite movie was, and like, that's an impossible question to answer.
Yeah.
But the thing that just kept popping in my head was Nacho Libre.
Nacho Libre. It's a top 3 every single time. Yeah, I don't know if I could put it 1, but top 3.
Oh man. All right. Yeah, but it's true. It's a taste of the glory, and you have to like. And some people get it right away, I think, because like I've taught folks about in the context of debt management. Before you put extra on the debt, be sure that you're saving for true expenses to prevent future debt. And some people are like, "Oh, that's it. That's the missing piece," and they totally get it, right? But for other people, it's hard because you don't see it until 6 months from now.
Yep, and tough. Some people are just naturally savers and planners. It makes sense. If you're a spender and you're like, oh, this is impossible for me. Again, just think of it as a habit, something that you can do on a consistent basis. And eventually you do that enough, it becomes a part of you. So you can practice. And the more you practice, the better you get. That's what I really love when we frame these rules as habits. I think it gives people hope because anyone can develop a new habit. You can't just fall back on, oh, I'm not good with money anymore, right? That just narrative doesn't work. You can establish new habits. Everyone can do that.
Yeah. And I think it's powerful too because, like you said, Rule 2 is probably the ultimate expression of this, but it's true across the board. A lot of getting people to try YNAB is just trust us. Like, just trust us. It's going to be worth it. You know, like the payoff is enormous, and it really is, but sometimes it takes a while to feel it. For other people, I mean, I've seen people that are like, I started YNAB a week ago and it's changed my life. And I'm like, wow, all right. Good for you. That's awesome. You know, and sometimes it takes a little longer to like really feel it.
Yeah.
But calling it a habit, I think has that promise wrapped up in it. Because, you know, anything that's discipline or is something that you try to establish as a good habit, that the reason why you do it is because if you do it consistently, you'll see results, and that's why you make it a habit. So, yeah, I like that, Ernie. I like how that promise of future reward is kind of wrapped up in that word habit.
Yeah.
There's something there. I'm liking this. All right, let's move on.
Move on.
Rule 3, shall we?
Okay, so we're going to move on to Rule 3.
Yes.
Roll with the punches. And when I think of this as habit, for me, I just put it as actually habit number 4. Not that the habits need to be sequential.
Oh,
but
habit number 4.
Yeah, we'll get to that later on. But so let's
Ernie's
just talk.
Reordering things. He's blowing it up.
That's just the way my mind thinks.
All right.
But we'll just talk about it as is right now. So habit 3, rolling with the punches. I don't know how you frame it. Here's how I frame it.
Okay.
It's just being honest about what's happened in the moment. Like what's happening right now. What do you think?
Okay. So it's being honest about what's happening right now. Like recognizing that because circumstances change, because priorities change, there's a cost to that. And you need to make a trade-off. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So I overspent in food this month. So that means I can't spend, let's say I overspent $100. I can't spend $100 from somewhere else. I can't buy something else with that $100. And so I need to make that trade-off. And so I make that switch right there in the moment. I address it, basically acknowledging that this really happened. So let's match up my money with reality.
You know, there's a blog came out that, I don't know if you guys know this, but I joined the writers team officially. Like I've kind of floated around in lots of teams in the marketing group here, but I joined the writers team, so I'm writing a lot more blogs. So if you feel like Ben's talking about all the blogs he's writing, that's why. But yeah, blog came out today about trade-offs and opportunity cost and all that good stuff. Today, meaning when we're recording, which is the 2nd of January. Yep. And yeah, it's a lot about that, where it's like you are making trade-offs, whether you're aware of them or not. You are always making trade-offs with your money because it's finite. Every time you spend money, you can't spend it on something else, right? All that Rule 3 does is make that trade-off conscious, help you be intentional with the trade-off instead of it just kind of happening and you don't really know what you gave up in order to do something. So yeah, I think the habit is not so much making the trade-off. The habit is consciously, intentionally making the trade-off, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's so huge about it. It happens when you overspend, but also just whenever you make a change to your plan.
Yep.
I'll say another way to frame it is that it's just rule 1, habit 1 again, right? You make a plan and then you change the plan because something came up or you couldn't see everything coming, right? And so rule 1 and rule 3 are very closely connected, so closely connected because without rule 1, you can't even have rule 3 because you can't change the plan unless you have a plan, right? And then when you're following rule 1, it's so much easier to keep rule 3 in mind because you don't have to feel like you're locked in, right? You don't have to. I think it can be really paralyzing. Like a lot of folks leave $100, $200 and ready to assign, and just let it sit there because that's the hardest money to assign. When you get down to the last couple $100, it's like, I don't know, And I have to tell folks, like, just pick something and you can change your mind. Like,
Yes,
and it helps so much to know that it's not permanent until you actually spend it. It's not permanent, and yeah, get all the way down to zero, like all the way down to zero because of the power of actually knowing what the trade-off is. If you don't assign every dollar, then when you actually follow rule 3, if you take it from that random pool of money, you end up right back where you started, where you don't know what trade-off you're making, right? And so anyways, it's just rule 1 again. And so it's even more habity. It's like habit 1, but extra habity because you're doing it even more, right?
that's a social video right there. It's rule 1, but more habity. Like, that's going to be a video clip.
Well, it's also habit 1. And we're doing rules and habits. We're just interchanging here. It's also habit 1, but not on a consistent basis. Like rule 1 is like every time you get paid.
Yes.
You
Yep.
do
Good
something.
point.
But rule 3 is like anytime you want to change it, So, and it comes up at random times. So it's more like the trigger is different. Like rule 1, the trigger is you get paid, you plan the money, right?
Yep.
And then rule 3 is more like something you overspend or your priorities change or your circumstances change. That's the trigger. You plan the money again,
Yeah. For me, habit 3 is what I'm doing in between paychecks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
that's why I like to put it number 4, because 1, 2, and 4 is what I do on payday with my paychecks.
Yeah. Right.
So
right.
again, just the way my brain thinks. I'm not saying this is the way we need to
Well,
order them.
Next time we blow up the rules and change them, because we talked about this. If you're a longtime Budget Nerds listener, we've talked about how the rules have changed all the time. And I don't know. I'm trying to remember where rule 4. I think rule 4 was the first rule at first, and then it like moved around. So it can move around.
Yeah,
again.
that was
Maybe
so
we'll
many
see.
months ago. There's no way I'm gonna even try to remember.
I can't remember. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, it could certainly move around. I'm curious what people think about that. Like, should rule 3 be last?
I'm probably the only person that thinks that.
I don't think so. I bet there's other people, because it's also kind of cool because it kind of turns all the rest on its head. It's like make a plan, and do whatever you want. But not like that. Like doing whatever you want intentionally.
I just love following instructions, right? So when I get paid, tell me what to do. Okay. Plan for the bills. Plan for the non-monthlies.
Mm-hmm.
Plan for next month. Perfect.
Ooh,
and then after you plan for that, here's what you do. Adjust.
Plan again.
Adjust.
Plan again when things change. Yeah. It's just plan.
Let's talk about results. I mean, I think we've already touched on it a little bit, but something that I'm thinking about with habit 3, rolling with the punches, is you always know exactly where you stand, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you're embracing reality, being honest about it, as you're making those trade-offs, the plan's adjusting, you always know exactly, once that adjustment's been made, what your money needs to do going forward. And again, it ties back to habit 1. It gives you clarity. And that's something I never had with the spreadsheet. I would have all these overspent categories, and it was like, okay, I'm not going to do anything about this or make any kind of adjustments. I'll just try harder next month. And then I just became very confused. Like, what does my bank balance even mean anymore? What does my savings account mean? What do these other numbers that I'm looking at in my spreadsheet? Just none of it had a connection to each other. Didn't make any sense. And didn't give me any results in the real world. So that's why my spreadsheet just never worked. But now when I'm making those adjustments, the category balances, they tie back into my actual account balances. And I can I can see the full picture. Like, all the dots connect for me and I can move forward. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important that it has a connection to reality. We always tell folks, just reflect reality in YNAB. If it happened in real life, just make it happen in YNAB. And that answers like so many questions, right? And if it actually has a connection to reality, then that it actually affects reality, affects your life. So again, budgets are made up and they're all constructs. They're not real.
I just saw that comment come up somewhere.
Yeah.
I think in a social circle, and like
I
it
saw
blew.
it too, yeah.
It just blows people's minds. It doesn't
Yeah,
exist.
somebody said that they watched all the Budget Nerds episodes, which like that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, good job. That's a lot. I wouldn't do that. But and somebody's like, well, what did you learn? They said budgets aren't real. It's all made up. So you got to connect it to reality. Right?
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite YNAB stories. I don't even know if I've ever shared it. I'm sure I have in some sort of way, shape, or form on the show. But talking about reality, when YNAB started to click for me, I remember looking at my category balance, and I would do this on a regular basis, and I kept saying to myself, "This is real money."
Mm-hmm.
The $200 in my
Yes.
groceries category, that is real money at the bank. And I remember it just blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. And even today, every so often, I find myself looking at YNAB and saying those words. This is real money.
It is. I mean,
Like I'm a
even though
10-year-old
you're just
kid who got a $20
you're just
bill.
changing numbers on a screen, but because you have the connection to reality, it's real.
Yeah.
And to bring it back to habit 3, to rule 3, when you actually make a change to your plan, it feels real because your plan is connected to reality because it represents real money. It's funny. We talked a lot about opportunity cost and how the true cost of something is giving up the opportunity. So if I pay $10 for something, I'm giving up the opportunity to spend that $10 on something else, right? And so in that way, money, like cash, currency, is not. It's a representation of something else, right? And so the numbers in YNAB is like a representation of something else, but it still has, so long as you make that connection in your mind, it's a real connection.
Yes.
It's powerful. So, I feel like we got way off the rails for Ernie, but if you talk about it long enough, you start to get into absurdity but no, I think it's good. It's good discussion.
All right, should we move on? Rule 4, habit 4, age your money.
Yeah, which should be habit 3, apparently.
Well, in my mind, it just makes sense. So how about you take this one? How do you frame rule 4 as a habit?
Okay, so 2 things. One, it's like kind of like a commitment in that I'm going to commit to set my future self up for success by not using all the money that I have today and setting it aside for next month, right? And because it's consistent like that, it feels like a commitment. Because this is something that I struggle with as a habit, because it feels like something that you just do once. Like you achieve rule 4, like you save your month buffer, and when you're done forever. If your income's consistent, it's especially true, because once you get a month ahead, you can stay a month ahead, right? So I'm thinking about it as a habit, and I'm like, well, is it something you do once, or is it something that you do consistently? And I actually think it is something you do consistently because you choose to maintain it.
Yes.
I have 2 months. I like to be 2 months ahead. I have 2 months of income hanging out in my bank account. I could buy a new Cadillac, right? Actually, I probably couldn't. I'm not sure how much Cadillacs cost. Probably, it's in my mind. Like I don't know why. Like I think when I was growing up, I found out like cars cost $13,000 or something, and now like that's the set of like a new car costs $13,000, and I know it's like twice that at least. So, anyways, I probably couldn't, but I could spend that money on anything, but I'm consistently, as a matter of a habit, consistently choosing not to, because that money is earmarked for next month or the following month.
It's the same for me. It's consistently choosing not to spend that money. When things come up and I have to roll with the punches, make changes, I know that future or that money that's sitting in my holding category for next month is off the table. Like that isn't even an option unless like I mean, we're talking major emergencies, right?
Right.
Of course,
Right.
everything becomes
Ultimately,
an
it
option
is
at
an
that
emergency
point.
fund. Yeah.
Yes.
If you need it, you need it. But
I overspend on vacation, or we spend a ton on food in December. I'm not gonna take from those future months, right? We're gonna make that adjustment using this month's money.
yeah, and this was a big aha moment for me. Again, this is rule 3, connecting with rule 4, to not use next month's money to cover any overspending, to only cover overspending from within the current month. Because I would run into this issue, and this was mostly with my margin. Like literally very first episode of Budget Nerds talked about. I have $300 that isn't part of my budget template or my targets, right? And I would use that up almost every month with overspending, right? And so I decided to stop that, instead cover overspending by moving money from categories within the current month, and that made rule 4 even more real because I wasn't eating into my next month money all the time, and I was making the consistent decision to protect that money.
I'm thinking of all those folks we hear from regularly who do, when making the adjustments, they pull from next month, and you just kind of feel like you hear that defeat, almost shame in their voice. Here's where I love when we reframe them as habits. Like, it's not a rule that you broke, right? You're all of a sudden a bad YNABer.
Yeah.
But it's a habit, right? So you can grasp that habit. You can make it a part of your everyday life, and you can start a new path going forward. I feel like when we reframe as habits, there's so much more aspirational.
It's more grace.
More grace, more hope.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
That is the number one most compelling reason to maybe switch this over to habits at some point, because I think that's what a lot of what we're trying to do is combat some of the real mean stuff in personal finance land. Like, there's just a lot of judgy meanness, and it's better because if you break a rule, it's like you're condemned, right? If you break a habit, it's like, okay, you can start again,
Yeah.
So,
Well, in the
we
other
have
thing,
no power to actually make these habits, but I'm kind of getting there, guys.
we're making our case, right?
I'm feeling it.
What kind of sway do we have at YNAB, Ben?
I mean, I can post something on Slack. No, I think things are moving in that direction. We'll see. We'll see.
Just thinking of that aspirational side a little bit more, just thinking about personal finance in general. Most folks would probably say, no one ever taught me anything about how to handle money. But there's all of these rules out there, right, about what you should and shouldn't do. And somehow we're supposed to know those with no one having taught us them. Mm-hmm. That just doesn't make sense, right? So
and you're an idiot if you don't.
You're an idiot if you don't. So if we could just change that narrative, like, okay, no one taught you these habits. Here they are. And just test them out, stay consistent, right? A little bit every single day, every single week, every month. Do that over and over. They become a part of you, and you start seeing real results.
Mm-hmm. It's to bring it back around. It's like meditation, because you've been getting into that. I've been getting into that too. I have an app that has some guided meditation, and I've tried it several times before. But one thing I love, like, you ever like try to meditate and you're like, meditate perfectly. Like, I'm going to hear meditating perfectly go, but the guided meditation would go through, and I think this is common in that space where it's like, just focus on your breath, and there's all these techniques to focus on your breathing. And if your mind wanders, it's okay. Just bring it back, and actually it's good to do that, because the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. That is the kind of framing I want, where it's like, okay, you broke rule 3. No, you broke habit 3. Just bring it back, bring it back to the habit and just start over. And
you're not going to figure it. it all out in a week. I mean, sure, maybe there's a handful of people, right? But
Yeah.
hey, I've been doing this thing 10 years and I'm still learning better ways to manage my money within those habits. So it's just this continual process. Give yourself grace. Make mistakes, like screw things up in YNAB.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about, I mean, I feel like, budget nerds, right? Like we nerd out about YNAB. And I think a lot of times the messaging is like, we have these perfect budgets, right? And they're definitely not perfect.
You want to look at my dining out category last month? Because if you look at the target and you look at the budgeted amount, the spent amount, it's quite different because it was weird last month. Let me tell you.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, so the numbers are, they're still a mess for everyone. And we change things up, but what we have gotten really, really good at, YNABers who have experienced success is they've gotten really good at these habits, implementing them consistently.
Yeah, and coming back to them when you break them. I mean,
yes.
This is everything. Like this is, I hear this over and over again. Like I had a nutrition coach for a year help me eat better, and what she told me was the people that are successful are not the people that are perfect with it, because that doesn't exist.
Yep.
It's more about how quickly you return to the good habits. So you should expect to fall away from these habits, and it's more about getting back to it consistently. Just as fast as you can, just return to what you know is right, and that is a lot more powerful than just saying you blew it,
Yeah. Or even for the folks who they didn't blow it, but life happened and they ended up spending a lot of money, and they had the money there, right? So boy, I mean, good for them, but they feel a little bit of deflation because they're watching these beautiful category balances go down.
Yeah.
And absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yes, it doesn't always feel good. I've experienced that myself. But I remember, because I went through this past summer, and then I remember the thought was, okay, we've spent a ton of money. That's okay. Like that was the purpose of using YNAB, to save money for these situations. Now it's just working habit 2, habit 3, like rolling with the punches and continue. Let's start it all over again. Let's start ramping up these category balances.
I love it. Yeah. It's never consistent. It goes up and it goes down.
Yep.
There are times in your life where you're like, man, things are going to be tight for a while, but then it'll change again later. So I think having that long view really helps.
Whew.
I'm feeling this. I'm liking this habit. I think it led us to a softer, kinder discussion. Like, I don't know. Let us know, guys. Like, we are super curious because we've been batting this around internally. You probably might see a few more mentions of it all around YNAB land. If you like this, like, what would you think if we just stopped calling them rules and started calling them habits instead? Reframe it that way entirely. Would that freak you out? It's okay. Let me know. But do you like it? I kind of like it. I'm kind of liking it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts. So looking forward to the emails, looking forward to the YouTube comments.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. All right.
Well, we can't end without a couple YNAB wins. I know we've gone 45 plus minutes, but we got to do a couple wins. So let's do it.
Got to do some wins. Let's do it.
All right, got a couple wins for you. My win comes from Jay Lancelot. The letter J, commented on Ben's updated categories video months and months ago.
Sorry, Jay.
YNAB win. After listening to this and the Ernie's categories episode, I had an epiphany and revamped my own categories. Certain large purchases were being made out of small categories infrequently. There is now one category called luxuries for infrequent large presents to ourselves, which can include spending from future funded goals, and those categories can then be deleted. I then collapsed a bunch of those smaller categories into my consumables category. They were consumables masquerading as something else. Know what you mean there?
I get it.
Of course, all of this involved some sweet, sweet nerdum as I scrolled through past transactions and months to keep everything in balance after all the changes. Thanks, B&E.
Oh, that's so fun.
You're welcome. And that's an awesome win. I mean, that's just changing things up, making those adjustments because, yeah, as time goes on, you realize, hey, we can tweak some things here. We can line up money, the categories a little bit more with reality.
And I love the word luxuries for a category name. I mean,
that's fancy.
That's just, well, it's fancy, but it's also like, I feel like you're kind of like recognizing like, oh man, like I have good things, and maybe it'll bring in some gratitude, and yeah, that's good. I like that. All right. I have an email from Cheyenne. Haven't read it yet at all. So, well, I might have read it when it came in, but she probably sent it like a year ago. So, all right, let's see. I've been using a paper-based budget along with envelopes stored in a safe for a few years. Oh, very interesting. Okay. Recently converted to YNAB because of the free year for students. My wife has been in tune with our finances, and I always worry she will be lost if I were to pass away. The YNAB app and having our money always in our checking account has made it easier for her to see how our financial picture works. She is more engaged, and we've started to take turns handling the budget on paydays and reconciliation days. Thank you, YNAB. Oh, I love that. Because look at it this way. I guess the categories were literally locked away in a safe, right?
Yeah.
And so if you wanted to have visibility of that, you'd have to literally go and probably like crawl under a desk and like unlock something and look at it, and like then you have to count. Oh man, I'm so glad we don't have to do paper envelopes, man. I
keep my cash in a paper envelope in a safe, and I go into it weekly, and I hate going into that safe. I hate it. But
yeah,
what I love, reconciliation days. Right, there is a day.
The fact that that's a thing at all.
Yep, circle it on the calendar. And Cheyenne's wife is involved in everything. I mean, that's what you want, right? Both partners involved. I love that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Super cool. Both of these have a little nerdiness in it, so that's always fun. All right.
Well, if you have a win, feel free to drop it in the comments. Otherwise, send us an email, budgetnerds@ynab.com.
All right. And until next time, happy YNABing.
See you, friends.